Autosuggestion. What it is and how to use it for health, happiness, and success. By Dr. Herbert A. Parkyn. This book is in the public domain. Introduction. During the years 1903 and 1904, I published a series of articles on autosuggestion in the magazine Suggestion. From the reception accorded the series and the great demand for back numbers of the magazine, which could not be supplied, I decided to revise the articles, make some additions, and publish them in their present form. It is only within the last few years that we have thoroughly recognized the existence of one of the greatest forces in nature, autosuggestion, and the part it plays in influencing health, happiness, and success. And the more we study its operations, the clearer becomes the explanation for so many things that formerly appeared to belong to the realm of occultism. It is now a demonstrable fact that all the phenomena of Christian Science, magnetic healing, divine science, mental science, sacred shrines, absent treatment, success circles, etc., are due to autosuggestion. In fact, the majority of cures made under the direction of the practitioners of the various schools of medicine can be traced directly to the same cause, and progressive physicians everywhere are now studying the phenomena of autosuggestion, and the leading monthly medical magazines are teeming with valuable contributions on psychotherapeutics. Every human being is continually influenced by the subtle power of autosuggestion, for it enters into every conscious and unconscious action of our lives. Through its unconscious use, persons have made invalids for years, only to recover when the character of their autosuggestions was changed, although the change may have occurred as unconsciously as the harmful autosuggestions were first developed. After 14 years' practical experience with suggestive therapeutics in the treatment of patients, I have now hesitation in saying that the most important study connected with the healing art is the study of autosuggestion. But autosuggestion plays such a vital part in our daily lives, in the forming of character, and in our successes and our failures, that it should be studied and understood by everyone in every walk of life. In these few chapters, I have endeavored to show what autosuggestion is, and have given a few illustrations to show how it can be used to advantage when understood. During the time these articles were appearing in Suggestion, I received scores of letters from persons who claimed they had relieved themselves of long-standing troubles by following the simple instructions given therein. And I sincerely hope they may prove as beneficial to many other sufferers in their new form. To those who desire to make a more thorough study of suggestive therapeutics in all its branches, I take pleasure in heartily recommending my larger work entitled A Course in Suggestive Therapeutics. Signed, Herbert A. Parkyn, M.D. Chapter 1. Autosuggestion. What it is and how it operates. The term autosuggestion is in such common use that the majority of readers understand the meaning of the term. But in order that every reader may follow me intelligently, I will define the term as we shall use it. The word auto means self. The word suggestion means impression. Consequently, autosuggestion means self-impression. An impression made on oneself, or better still, an impression arising within one's own mind. The self-impression may be made voluntarily. For instance, when one impresses his mind with the thought that he must arise at an early morning hour. This is an example of voluntary autosuggestion. Or the self-impression may be made involuntarily, in which case it is the outgrowth of a sequence of ideas that have been unconsciously aroused by some external impression, or by some thought, or some real or imaginary bodily sensation. For instance, a New York visitor in Chicago looks at his watch, which is set at an hour ahead of Chicago time, and tells a Chicago friend that it is 12 o'clock. The Chicago friend, not considering the difference in time between Chicago and New York, tells the New Yorker that he is hungry and that he must go to lunch. 12 o'clock is the Chicago man's regular lunch hour, and the mere mention of 12 o'clock is sufficient to arouse his appetite. Or a man may have touched an article of clothing that he discovers has been worn by someone afflicted with a skin disease, and immediately he may begin to find itching spots all over his body and imagine he has contracted the disease. These are examples of the effects of involuntary autosuggestion. A great many phenomena that are attributed usually to intuition can be traced to involuntary autosuggestion. For instance, a young child may take a dislike to some man who has spoken harshly or done some mean thing in its presence. The man and the incident may be entirely forgotten, but the impression is stored up in that wonderful storehouse, the mind, and in after years the child, grown to manhood, will carry a dislike for anyone resembling the disliked man of his childhood, and this dislike will not down. Ask a man who holds such a dislike as this why he should dislike a person to whom he has just been introduced, and he'd probably say, "Oh, I cannot tell you why I dislike him. I only know that I do. My dislike for him is intuitive." Now, this dislike is certainly not intuitive. It is the result of an involuntary autosuggestion which has arisen from the stored-up impressions of childhood that have been aroused by a sequence of unconscious thoughts started into activity by the general appearance of the new acquaintance. Such dislikes, as a general rule, are very strong, no matter how unjust, and we all entertain them in some form or other. Would it not be interesting if we could determine what an important part these early impressions of childhood play in our lives today in the form of involuntary autosuggestions? While we can be influenced by the dislikes of childhood, we are just as strongly influenced by the likes and desires of childhood, and almost every day of our lives we find ourselves accomplishing something that we determined to do when children, little realizing that the force that has enabled us to attain the object is the involuntary autosuggestion that has steadily grown out of the strong but forgotten desire of years ago. Another form of autosuggestion. There is still another form of autosuggestion which I have called voluntary autosuggestion. This term may seem paradoxical at first, but a couple of illustrations will serve to show that I have used the term correctly. A physician prescribes medicine for a nervous, sleepless patient, with instructions that a dose is to be taken every 2 hours. Now, the patient may never have heard of autosuggestion, but this is the mental process he goes through unconsciously, involuntarily, whenever he takes a dose of the medicine. I am taking this medicine to quiet my nerves and enable me to sleep soundly tonight. Or a patient has sent a remittance for a month's absent treatment to an absent healer who may be several thousand miles away. Having received an acknowledgement of the receipt of his remittance and instructions to place himself in a receptive attitude at a certain hour each day to receive the telepathic treatment, he obeys the instructions and at the appointed hour sits down or lies down to receive his share of the telepathic health thoughts. Now the health thoughts come to him whether the healer thinks of him or not, for they come in the form of voluntary autosuggestions, and if his trouble be constipation, his thought comes to him as he settles himself for treatment. I am now prepared to receive my absent treatment. The healer's best thought is coming my way and stimulating my bowels into activity. I want them to operate every morning. Similarly, if this patient were taking magnetic treatment, he would think to himself, the magnetism from the operator's hands is flowing through my body and is stimulating my bowels, etc. Thus we have voluntary autosuggestions taken involuntarily, and it is this form of autosuggestion that the practical suggestionist employs in order to obtain the best therapeutic results in persons or patients that are avowed skeptic towards suggestive therapeutics. This is accomplished by giving the patient a number of things to do daily, such as sipping his liquids, physical culture exercises, etc. Having impressed upon him the idea that marked benefit will follow these simple practices, voluntary autosuggestion arise within his mind, and he is strongly influenced for good every time he sips or exercises. When beginning suggestive treatment, the importance of recognizing these three classes of autosuggestion and making a careful study of employing voluntary autosuggestion should not be overlooked. The proper use of autosuggestion should be taught to children in our public schools, but a thorough knowledge of its use is an absolute necessity to anyone who would obtain the best results in the practice of the healing art. For autosuggestion is at one and the same time the worst foe and the strongest ally to be met with in treating mental and physical disorders. Every physician has encountered patients whose autosuggestions in the forms of fear, doubt, fancy, whim, lack of confidence, etc., have retarded or positively prevented the slightest relief from his treatment. A study of the effects and uses of autosuggestion will enable any physician to recognize adverse autosuggestions, and by employing the properly directed suggestions, he can mold the autosuggestions of his patients to assist in the restoration of health. In employing autosuggestion, it is well to have in mind some practical theory of the way in which its use produces results. Let us assume, therefore, that the dual mind theory advocated by Hudson in his Law of Psychic Phenomena is correct. But instead of employing the terms objective mind and subjective mind suggested by Hudson, mortal mind and immortal mind, or conscious mind and subconscious mind suggested by others, let us use the terms voluntary mind and involuntary mind. Voluntary and involuntary mind. Remember that the involuntary mind is the mind that controls us during sleep. The one is not conscious of the operations of the involuntary mind. That the involuntary mind controls every function of every organ in the body. That it is the seat of the emotions and the guardian of the memory. That our whole educational experience is stored in the involuntary mind. That the involuntary mind is incapable of reasoning inductively, and that it is amenable to control by the voluntary mind. Remember that the voluntary mind is inactive during natural sleep, but is alert the instant a sleeping man becomes conscious of the reception of impressions through the senses. That the voluntary mind is capable of inductive as well as deductive reasoning. That impressions stored in the involuntary mind and the operations of the functions of the organs of the body can be stimulated, retarded, and in some cases completely changed or checked by impressions made upon the involuntary through the medium of the voluntary mind. In other words, the involuntary mind is automatic in its operations, but is always open to control by the impressions made upon it by the voluntary mind. Accordingly, a person that is always talking about his ailments conveys his unhealthy thoughts to his involuntary mind, and his body is influenced accordingly. While the student of suggestion, by talking health to others and thinking health thoughts himself with a view to charging his involuntary mind with the ideas of healthy conditions, reaps a rich harvest in the form of improved or sustained health. A man that is self-conscious, afraid, and timid can make himself determined, confident, aggressive, and fearless by holding these strong thoughts in his voluntary mind till the involuntary mind claims them as its own and influences his subsequent bearing accordingly. Learn to influence the involuntary mind, and you can influence yourself mentally and physically as you desire. But the involuntary mind must be reached through the voluntary mind. Seek, then, to control the voluntary thoughts. in this chapter, I have endeavored by definitions and examples to give the reader some idea of the meaning, force, and scope of autosuggestion so that in subsequent chapters it will not be necessary to refer again to the meaning of the term autosuggestion. Remember the three classes of autosuggestion: voluntary, involuntary, and involuntary voluntary. End of chapter. Chapter 2. Autosuggestion, its effects, and how to employ it to overcome physical troubles. Accepting troubles resulting from physical violence, every physical trouble that can be found in a human body can be traced to imperfections in the blood supply of the body. Blood is the agent that supplies life to every cell in the body, and the health of the individual cell depends upon the quantity and quality of the blood that nourishes it. Consequently, when the health of all the cells that go to make up the human organism is impaired, it is to the blood supply of the body that we must look for relief. A person who has always had normal blood has always had perfect health. And when the blood supply of a person suffering from physical troubles becomes normal, every abnormal symptom disappears, excepting in rare cases where serious tissue changes have taken place after prolonged malnutrition of the cells composing the affected tissues. The quantity and quality of the blood supplied to the body depend upon the quantity and quality of food and liquids consumed, the air breathed, and the work performed by the main organs of nutrition and elimination, i.e. the stomach, bowels, lungs, kidneys, and skin. Consequently, if I can show that autosuggestion can create an appetite for wholesome food and stimulate the organs of nutrition and elimination till they are handling the food so it will be turned into good, red, normal blood, I shall have shown how physical troubles can be overcome by employing autosuggestion. In treating oneself by autosuggestion, the life essentials must be given careful consideration and be properly partaken of, for all the autosuggestions of health, strength, etc. will prove unavailing unless the life essentials are supplied in proper proportions. And it is because this cardinal point is so frequently overlooked by Christian scientists, mental scientists, magnetic healers, physicians of all schools, and osteopathists that so many of their patients find their way to the office of the expert suggestionist, who almost invariably relieves their physical troubles in short order. The life essentials. It is necessary for a patient to understand that his body requires 2 parts of water or other liquids every day of his life. The knowledge of this fact then becomes an autosuggestion, and it continually prompts him to drink sufficient liquid until he forms the habit of drinking 2 quarts every day. Then he should learn that fresh air is another essential, and his mind should dwell on this point until his autosuggestions prompt him to breathe deeply, and the habit of deep breathing is formed. He must also be taught that the cells of the body require certain constituents found in food, and that these constituents are most easily obtained from food similar to that which goes to make up the diet of the average healthy man. The average patient lives on foods prepared especially for dyspeptics, shuns the hearty diet of the healthy man, and is always looking for the time to come when he can eat the hearty diet. But he fails to realize that he is prolonging his misery by avoiding the food which contains the very constituents that would bring him health. Place a healthy man on a restricted diet of an average patient, and it will not take long to make a sick man of him. Ask a patient who lives on prepared foods or a restricted diet why he does not eat food like a healthy man, and he will tell you that he is afraid to eat. His past experiences have shown him that a hearty diet causes stomach distress. And now the fault does not lie in the hearty food, for this same food keeps the healthy man in good health, and no one ever obtained good health by avoiding the food taken by healthy men. No, The food must not be blamed, for the trouble lies in the patient's inability to digest it, and the inability to digest it can usually be traced to the patient's failure to partake of the other life essentials, air and water. The quantity of the digestive juices in the body depends on the quantity of the liquids drunk, and if a person drinks too little fluid, his secretions are stinted. Stint the quantity of gastric juice, and the stomach will not digest the same quantity of food as it will when the gastric juice is not stinted. Again, if a patient does not breathe deeply, he does not get as much air as a man who does breathe deeply, nor does his blood circulate so freely. Consequently, feeble breathing of impure air will also retard the work of the stomach and bowels in digesting and assimilating food. Many of the most obstinate cases of constipation and dyspepsia can be overcome simply by drinking sufficient liquids and forming a habit of breathing deeply. The deep breathing acts as a massage to the stomach and bowels, while the liquids supply the gastric juice for the stomach and the pancreatic juice and bile for the intestines. Bile is the natural purgative. Of course, thorough mastication is necessary. Let these facts concerning the life essentials sink into a patient's mind, and his autosuggestions will prompt him to strive to obtain the proper quantity of the life essentials every day of his life. Then, too great stress cannot be laid on the important part the mind plays in stimulating the organs of the body to perform their work of handling the life essentials after they have been properly supplied. And in order to show just how wonderfully the mind does control the main organs of nutrition and elimination, it is only necessary to give a few common illustrations of phenomena that have been experienced or witnessed by everyone. Let a person imagine he is squeezing the juice from a lemon into his mouth or eating a delicacy, and he will immediately notice a marked increase in the flow of saliva into his mouth. The sight of a horrible accident or a disgusting scene frequently retards digestion, and nausea may result. A disgusting sight or uninviting looking food may instantly remove an excellent appetite. A shocking piece of news has been known to cause instantaneous death, and it frequently happens that the worry, grief, nervousness, etc., following the receipt of disastrous news will rapidly undermine the health of the strongest individuals. Owing to the fact that the mental depression robs them of their usual appetite, retards the digestion of the food they do eat, in other words, they neglect the life essentials, and poor health is the inevitable result. Following the nervousness caused by fright, bad news, educational examinations, and even athletic games, such troubles as diarrhea, polyuria, vomiting, etc. frequently occur. Adverse autosuggestions. If a patient recovering from a serious illness tells of the suffering he has endured, for the time being he suffers again, as one can see by his actions and facial expression. This reciting and imagining of past experiences retards the progress of many patients. And in treating patients or in using self-treatment, this form of adverse autosuggestion must be tabooed. It is a well-known fact that while medical students are studying the symptoms of different diseases, they frequently suffer from many of the symptoms and imagine they have the diseases. And there is no end to the suffering that has been produced by the reading of the patent medicine pamphlets that flood the country. Recently, I received a letter from a correspondent in a neighboring city, in which he mentions the curious coincidence that two of his brother physicians had died lately. One, a specialist in the treatment of mental and nervous disorders, had died from paresis. The other, a specialist in the treatment of diseases of the kidneys, died from Bright's disease of the kidneys. I could give scores of other examples to show the deleterious effects the mind can have upon the various organs of the body when it is filled with unchecked adverse autosuggestions. But it is the object of this chapter to show how the same force can be directed intelligently by the will to improve the work of every organ in the body and bring health and comfort to the sick. Mental troubles, nervousness, grief, worry, excitement, etc. will produce physical troubles, but I shall devote another chapter to the treatment of mental troubles by autosuggestion and will confine myself for the present to telling how to overcome physical troubles, although patients suffering from combined mental and physical troubles will be greatly benefited by carefully following the instructions given in this chapter. Did you ever notice what complete control your mind has over your hands and how perfectly you have educated them to perform their work for you? Well, your mind can also control your stomach, bowels, heart, and other organs if you will educate them to work for you. There is no doubt that in ages past, man had voluntary control of these organs, but he has left them so much to the control of the involuntary or automatic mind that they are now looked upon as involuntary organs. But if you will endeavor to direct their work by your thoughts, just as you have directed your hands and fingers, you will discover they will respond to your directions, provided you supply them with the proper materials with which to perform their work. If you decide to write a letter, you must supply the fingers with pen, ink, and paper, and your fingers will do better work for you if they are warm, i.e., well supplied with good blood, and the better nourished the fingers are, the better work they will do. Again, your writing can be good, bad, or indifferent according to the amount of care you take in directing your fingers. Similarly, the stomach and bowels can be assisted in their work by supplying them with plenty of liquids and wholesome, thoroughly masticated food, and their work can be made good, bad, or indifferent according to the care taken in sending them frequent, strong, healthful, commanding health impulses. The lungs can be directed to breathe deeply, but fresh air must be supplied, and the heart, whether too fast or too slow, can be educated to beat normally, but it must be supplied with sufficient blood on which to work, and the lungs must be controlled to breathe so that the blood will receive sufficient oxygen. First, then, in importance are the life essentials: air, water, and food. These must be supplied to make the blood, which, as I have already pointed out, is the actual healing agent in the body. If the patient has been unable to digest hearty food for a long time, he should promptly supply the two essentials, air and water, and in a few days, slowly but surely, he will be able to increase the quantity of food until he can eat anything and everything eaten by healthy men. Next in importance are the autosuggestions. There must come as a positive mental command to the various organs to perform their work properly in making good blood, circulating the blood, supplying their secretions, and eliminating the waste materials from the body. The autosuggestions must be made frequently, and in order to ensure this, a good plan is to arrange to take required amount of liquids in small sips during the day. Say 60 sips during the day, taken with meals and between meals. Every time the water is sipped, the autosuggestions should be made. Since thinking how thoughts will produce desirable effects, it is evident that if a patient tells his troubles to his friends or dwells upon his troubles mentally, he will counteract the beneficial autosuggestions. Consequently, when employing the autosuggestions for self-treatment, if you must talk about your health, tell about the improvement you are making. And if you think about yourself, only think thoughts that you desire to have taken action in your body. Examples. Here is an example of the way in which to employ autosuggestion. This mouthful of water is one of the life essentials. I am taking it to increase the secretions in my body, and it will help to carry away the waste materials. It is to increase the quantity of saliva, and I will masticate every mouthful of food thoroughly. It will increase the quantity of gastric juice, and my stomach will perform its work of digestion properly. It is to increase the quantity of pancreatic juice and the quantity of bile, and my bowels will complete the digestion of my food and turn it into good, red, rich blood. My appetite is growing better. I am hungry all the time. I am eating like a healthy man, and I am obtaining as much strength from my food as any healthy man. This water also makes my bowels move at a regular hour every day. It is a stimulant to my liver and is forcing my bowels to move. My kidneys and skin are working perfectly. I am bright, happy, and cheerful. I am obtaining perfect health from the life essentials. The good, rich blood I am making now is carrying health to every cell in my body. Health is my birthright. There is health all around me. I am eating it, drinking it, breathing it. I am healthy now. This mouthful of water is also a reminder that I must eat some air, and I shall now proceed to educate my lungs to breathe deeply by taking 6 deep breaths. I shall take a moderate amount of exercise commensurate with my store of energy, but I am making certain that I am appropriating more strength each day from the life essentials than I am expanding. Thus, I am banking on my energy. I feel better and stronger this moment. These or similar autosuggestions taken frequently every day with a liberal supply of the life essentials will benefit any physical sufferer. I care not what his complaint. Rheumatism, sick headache, neuralgia, constipation, feebleness, certain forms of nervousness, failing eyesight, nasal catarrh, etc. are all symptoms of faulty circulation, and by following the self-treatment I have outlined, the cause of the symptoms disappears. The symptoms themselves soon follow the cause. Consequently, in employing the autosuggestions, it is not necessary to think of the various complaints. Think the thoughts that will bring general physical improvement, and the symptoms will be overwhelmed in the irresistible march of health that will surely follow the health thoughts all through the body. Thought is a positive dynamic force that takes form in action. Chapter 3. Autosuggestion. How to employ it to overcome mental troubles. In my practice of suggestive therapeutics, I am consulted almost daily by patients who tell me that they are suffering from mental troubles in one or more of the following forms: worry, grief, fear, insomnia, timidity, nervousness, melancholia, loss of memory, or lack of concentration. That they have practiced autosuggestion faithfully, taken Christian Science treatment, and used the affirmations conscientiously without obtaining relief, and that they have come to the conclusion they require the assistance of a stronger mind to enable them to overcome their mental troubles. After listening to their tales of woe, I invariably question this class of patients carefully about their physical condition. Frequently, my questions are answered impatiently, and before I have finished the examination, the patient may say, "Doctor, I don't care about any physical trouble I may have. I have consulted other physicians about them and can keep myself in fairly good condition by taking a little medicine occasionally. But I have come to you to be relieved of my mental troubles, and if you can alleviate these, I can stand the physical inconveniences. In fact, if my mental condition be improved, I believe my physical symptoms will disappear." It is curious how many persons overlook the fact that the mind and body are interdependent. Occasionally, we find a person in perfect physical health suffering from a mental trouble, and sometimes we find a patient with a physical trouble whose mental condition seems perfect. But these cases are exceptions to the rule, and a careful analysis of even these exceptions might show that they are more apparent than real, especially if the mental or physical trouble be chronic. Not one person in 10,000 understands the necessity for giving daily attention to the life essentials, air, water, and food, nor does he realize that his health depends upon these essentials. Consequently, when grief or worry comes to the average person, it robs him of his usual desire to partake of the life essentials, and he runs down physically. If the grief or worry lasts a long time, the main organs of nutrition become affected, and the blood supply being stinted, 50 different physical symptoms may develop in the poorly nourished body, and the brain, sharing in general impoverishment, usually fails to perform its functions properly. At this stage, the worry and grief are increased, owing to the diminished activity of the mental balance wheel, the voluntary or objective mind, for the involuntary or subjective mind being freed from the restraint of the voluntary mind, which has dominion over it in good health. The involuntary thoughts run riot, and every abnormal mental symptom is aggravated. Unless the physical decline in health is stopped and the patient built up, the grief or worry is likely to become a permanent habit of thought, even if the prime cause of the grief or worry has been removed. When a patient has reached this low state of mind and body, every little circumstance is exaggerated, always for the worst, and many curious habits of thought and even hallucinations, manias, and dementia, obsessions, are likely to develop, to say nothing of such common troubles as insomnia, extreme nervousness, and melancholia. Mental and physical symptoms. On the other hand, a person in excellent mental condition may run down physically through his failure to partake of the proper amount of the life essentials. He may overwork, change his usual environment for one in which incorrect habits of living are practiced, work in a poorly ventilated office, or indulge in alcoholic, nicotinic, or other excesses until his health gives out. With the decline in general health, there is a corresponding decline in the mental condition. Reason, memory, concentration, sleep, self-control, etc., which are all brain functions, become impaired. And such symptoms as nervousness, insomnia, melancholia, abnormal habits of thought, hallucinations, manias, timidity, fear, etc., are likely to develop proportionately as the general health declines. Taking these facts into consideration, it must be evident to every thoughtful person that whether mental troubles precede or follow the decline in physical health in a patient, the first steps taken must be along lines that will improve his physical condition. For with an improvement in the nutrition of the brain, there must necessarily follow an improvement in the operations of the brain functions. There is an increase in the control exercised by the voluntary mind over the involuntary thoughts and actions, and slowly but surely the patient returns to mental and physical health, especially with the aid of an expert suggestionist or through the intelligent use of autosuggestion. First, then, every sufferer from mental troubles should turn to Chapter 2 and compare his habits of living with those of the healthy man. If he is not living up to these requirements and there are physical disorders, he should employ the autosuggestions outlined in that chapter and hold the following autosuggestion in mind at all times. As my physical condition improves, I am obtaining the mental characteristics I desire. The associating of this thought with the physical improvement is generally sufficient in itself to bring about the desired mental conditions as the health improves. In order to make this chapter thoroughly practical for those who desire to employ autosuggestion for overcoming mental troubles, I shall give an outline of the autosuggestions that have worked successfully with different classes of cases that have come under my care. Look after the life essentials and commence sipping your liquids even if your health is good, for with every sip comes the reminder that it is time to take the autosuggestive treatment. And in order to get the best results, the autosuggestions must be made as often as possible every day till the desired results have been obtained. For habitual worry, I am partaking of the life essentials like a healthy person and I realize that continued good health is bound to be mine. With good health, I can accomplish anything. I am strong and can overcome everything. I am bright, happy, and cheerful. I am doing my best every day for myself and everyone around me, and realizing this is all anyone can do, I shall rest contented with the thought that no matter what may occur, I have done my best. I shall live and enjoy today as it were the only day I had to live. I am doing my best today, and I shall sleep soundly tonight with a free, clear conscience and arise in the morning happy and cheerful in the thought that there is something for me to do in this world and that I will do it as well as I can. Thought takes form in action, so by thinking of things as I desire them to occur, I assist in molding things to conform to my desires. I am happy, cheerful, and contented now. For fear and timidity. Physical strength is the basis of success and courage. The life essentials are building up in my body, and I am becoming strong and robust. I have physical strength and I have determination. I feel my courage increasing. I am strong, courageous, and fearless now. I am a man amongst men, and I know my physical strength and courage will carry me through anything successfully. By thinking these strong thoughts, I feel stronger. My actions are stronger, and my confidence in myself is increasing. With this consciousness of my strength, I feel like conquering anything and everything. I go boldly, courageously, and fearlessly into everything I have to do. When I find something to be done, I act at once and am invariably successful in what I do because I go about it fearlessly. I have strength, determination, aggressiveness, courage, confidence, and fearlessness. For nervousness. Now that I am partaking properly of the life essentials, my body is being thoroughly nourished. My nerves and my brain are sharing in this increased nutrition and are returning to their normal condition. Already I feel stronger, quieter, more contented. My self-control has increased. I am now master within myself. I take everything quietly. I am calm, peaceful, and contented, and my self-control is excellent. I receive everything phlegmatically and deliberate before speaking and acting. I am conscious of an increase of my powers within. For impaired memory and impaired concentration. Memory and concentration are functions of the brain, and now that my circulation has improved from supplying the life essentials properly, I know that my brain is nourished better. This means that all the functions of my brain have improved in their operations, and already I can remember better and can apply myself better to any work I have in hand. As my health improves, I give my memory and concentration more daily exercises, and they are developing as any other part of my body would if exercised regularly. I look upon memory and concentration as mental muscles, and when a muscle is well nourished and judiciously exercised, it grows stronger. My memory and concentration are growing stronger, and eventually they will be better than at any previous time in my life. They are becoming perfect. For anger. The life essentials are bringing my whole body into harmony, and I shall endeavor to preserve harmony with everyone at all times. I realize that I always accomplish better what I desire to do when I act quietly and talk quietly. I now preserve my self-control under all circumstances, realizing that my judgment is better and that I grasp opportunities more quickly when I control myself deliberately. I always think twice now before speaking or acting, and everything I say or do is done deliberately after I am conscious that my self-control is fully called forth. Everyone around me is happier for the change. My friends place more confidence in me and my judgment since they realize that I am even-tempered and act and speak with judgment. Self-control has become a matter of pride with me, and I realize that I am a stronger man in every sense of the word. I find it true that a soft answer turneth away wrath. 12 times today I exercise great self-control, and I feel better and stronger for it. Every victory makes my next victory easier. I am a conqueror over myself, and I shall sleep tonight conscious of the fact that I have had a peaceful, harmonious day and made friends with everyone I met. For selfishness. Now that the life essentials are giving me generous installments of perfect health, I, in turn, will be generous to everyone I meet. True happiness comes from giving pleasure to others, and I strive daily now to do little things which give happiness to those around me. I am generous and charitable in my thoughts and actions. I think always of what I can do to give pleasure and enjoyment to those I meet, and I enjoy everything I have so much more if I can find someone with whom to share my blessings. I find my generosity is drawing staunch, generous friends around me, friends who, like myself, are not contented unless they share even their little pleasures with me, and their thoughtfulness makes me happy. I realize that these pleasures and this happiness are bestowed upon me because I take pleasure in the happiness of others. My generous nature has drawn generous friends around me, and I am happy and contented in their love and friendship. I am at peace with myself and the world. I only await the next opportunity to make someone happier by a generous thought, a word, or a deed, for I know it will increase my own store of happiness at the same time. I am thoughtful, charitable, and generous. For obvious reasons, it is not possible to enter into the detailed self-treatment of specific cases, so I have merely given an outline of the general treatment for certain classes of undesirable mental conditions or mental characteristics. However, the outline should serve to indicate the system of treatment to employ in a specific case, although every case must be carefully studied from many points of view, as each case is a law unto itself. The reader will have noticed that there is no mention of the troubles themselves in the various treatments outlined, and that negative autosuggestions are conspicuous by their absence. Avoid negative autosuggestions under all circumstances. Employ positive, affirmative autosuggestions to the effect that the conditions you desire to bring to pass are actually developing. Or go a step farther, especially as the treatment progresses, and assume and affirm that the conditions you desire are actually present. Avoid negative suggestions such as, I will not be nervous, I am not nervous, etc. Negative suggestions only serve to aggravate the trouble by calling it to mind. How different the effect upon the mind when you suggest to yourself that you are stronger and quieter, that your self-control has increased, etc. Thought takes form in action, and by constantly thinking of the desirable conditions, they actually develop. A timid man cannot think strong, determined, aggressive, fearless thoughts without being beneficially influenced by them, and if he keeps the strong thoughts constantly in his mind, he eventually becomes a strong, aggressive man. Chapter 4. Influence of early autosuggestions on the formation of character. Man's whole education is the result of impressions, suggestions received through the various sense avenues. A full-grown man has received thousands of impressions for every impression received by a 1-year-old child, and is able, in consequence, to reason better than a child. For reason and judgment are made possible by the storing away of impressions that have been received by the brain through the sense avenues. When it is necessary to make deductions or draw conclusions, these stored impressions are called upon, and the result of the deduction or the conclusion will depend entirely upon the nature of the impressions that have been received already by the mind. If you hand an apple to a normal man and tell him it is a doorknob, he merely laughs at you and tells you that he is not a fool, that he knows a doorknob when he sees it and handles it, and that he knows also the taste, smell, touch, and appearance of an apple. It is only by the calling forth of impressions already received through the senses and making mental comparisons that a man is able to tell the difference between an apple and a doorknob. A normal man is able to discern the difference at once because these are common articles, and he has received many impressions about them since his birth. The stored up impressions become auto-suggestions, and when you tell him a doorknob is an apple, his auto-suggestion comes to his rescue, and he is able to at once tell the difference. But there has been a time in his early life when, through lack of impressions or autosuggestions, he did not know the difference between an apple and a doorknob, nor, to his sorrow perhaps, between a hot stove and a nursery rocking horse. But experience in the form of impressions has developed autosuggestions, and today he is not likely to make a play toy out of a hot stove. Over a year ago, a friend of mine employed a green Irish girl who had scarcely tasted anything else but water, fish, and potatoes before coming to the United States. One morning, she came to her mistress holding a peach in one hand and a tomato in the other, and said, "Is them the same, Mum?" Peaches and tomatoes had been ordered for the house, and when brought to the door were mixed in the same basket. Now this girl had no autosuggestions concerning peaches and tomatoes to come to her rescue, for it was the first time she had ever seen either of them. The same girl was taught how to boil beets, but one day some red radishes were delivered at the kitchen door, and a little later she come to her mistress and said, "Mum, I don't think them beets we got today is any good. They're so small, and when I boiled them, they floated on top of the water. Besides, their insides are white." But this girl has received her impressions about beets, radishes, peaches, tomatoes, and many more American fruits and vegetables, and today is able, without any assistance or direction, to prepare a meal of any kind for any special occasion. Her mistress considers her a jewel. Why? Because so far as cooking was concerned, her autosuggestions were no further developed than a child's. She had no counter-suggestions to offer to her mistress's suggestions, and has quickly learned to prepare food suited to the taste of the family in which she is employed. There are great possibilities in a new wooden barrel, provided it is empty. It is very easy to fill it with syrup or kerosene or any other liquid. But if a barrel be filled first with kerosene, it is very difficult to so completely get rid of its impressions on the barrel that the barrel can be used afterward for syrup. The barrel, as it were, having formed an autosuggestion which is hard to overcome. Early impressions lasting. A young child's mind is very much like a barrel, so far as its first impressions are concerned. Its mind is an empty thing waiting to be filled with any kind of impressions, and the impressions of childhood are by far the most lasting. It can be brought up to speak French or German or any other language spoken in its presence. It can be brought up to believe in Christ or in heathen idols. It can be brought up courteous and gentle or vulgar and coarse. It can be brought up to have good principles or bad principles. In fact, its character ideals, beliefs, and ambitions can be molded to suit the inclinations of its parents if the early impressions are properly made. These early impressions become the strongest class of autosuggestions in later years, and if undesirable habits of thinking or living have been formed in childhood, it can become a heroic task to overcome them after the child grows to manhood. If parents could be brought up to understand these facts, how carefully they would select the impressions that are to influence the whole life of the little charge given to their keeping. Properly directed suggestions systematically given to children will not only keep them healthy and instill right principles and desirable ethics, but their inclinations can be developed so they will naturally desire to pursue any line of work or study that will lead up to the life's work decided upon in advance by their parents. The mind of the average child, however, is left upon to the inroads of all kinds of suggestions, some of them good, many of them bad, and others useless or foolish if not disastrous. Poor child, he does not know enough to encourage and seek the impressions which will make his life easy and useful, nor is he able to shut out the impressions that will have a deleterious effect upon his career. Without a chance to protect himself, and without being consulted as to his own choice in the matter, he is thrust into the home of a king, into the teepee of an Indian, or into what he can from his environment. He can be made a prince of the realm or a bloodthirsty savage, a Christian or a Mohammedan, all depending upon the impressions he receives. If his parents practice correct habits of eating, drinking, breathing, and thinking, he will follow their example and grow up healthy and strong. If they are kind, gentle, courteous, thoughtful, and loving, he develops, not inherits, these qualities. If they are rough, selfish, rude, jealous, careless, and quarrelsome, he develops all these characteristics, grows up entirely devoid of refinement or finer feelings, and has no conception of them, because, like the servant with the peaches and tomatoes, he has had no experience with them. He cannot see that he is different from other men. He does not know the real meaning of selfishness, because he has never experienced generosity, and quarreling comes as natural to him as eating. If anyone will take the trouble to watch the effects of some of the absurd impressions he has received in childhood, or will look for them in others, he will discover that they unconsciously influence our thoughts and actions to a far greater degree than one would believe possible. Superstitions of childhood. How many of us are not influenced in our actions by little superstitions that were suggested to us in childhood? We laugh at these superstitions, and still they influence us. Do you really believe that? If you are walking with a friend and you allow a lamppost, a tree, or another person to pass between you, your friendship is to be broken in consequence? Or do you really think you will have bad luck all day if after leaving your house you return to get something you have forgotten and start off again without first sitting down? No, I don't believe you take these superstitions seriously. Still, to be on the safe side, you will avoid letting anything pass between yourself and a friend, or you will sit down for a moment after returning from something forgotten. A nurse can wield a wonderful influence for good or for bad over the children in her charge. I know of a case in point where an ignorant, superstitious Irish nurse brought up a large family of children. Every one of these children became imbued with all the old nurse's outrageous superstitions, and the influence of a brogue can be heard in the speech of all the children in the family, and it has been handed down in turn to their children, with all the old lady's superstitions. Her ridiculous notions about gray eyes, brown eyes, blue eyes, red hair, dimpled chins, etc. have influenced them in their friendships and marriages, and her bugaboo stories about goblins and dragons in the dark have made them timid after nightfall. Importance of child training. As a rule, parents pay little attention to the nurses they employ to look after their children. They employ Mary or Jane because she seems kind-hearted and can be hired cheap because too ignorant as a rule to fill positions in which more money can be earned. Kindness is not all that is required to make a good nurse for a child. And if parents could fully realize a nurse's influence on their children, they would employ only a speaker of good English, a woman with charming manners and good principles, a woman, in fact, who possesses the qualities they would like to see developed in their children. A nurse of this kind is cheap at any price. I venture to say the time is not far distant when there will be regular training schools established for nurses for children, and that these nurses, when properly qualified, will draw larger salaries than the trained nurses from our hospitals. When this time comes, the training of the children who are to be candidates subsequently for the presidency of the Republic will not be left to ignorant Mary or Jane. If a nurse is to be employed at all, it will be a nurse who will give the child the best influences during the time he is receiving his first suggestions, the most impressionable time of a man's whole life. Not long ago, I was riding in the same railway coach with a mother and her little girl. The child was sitting in the seat opposite to her mother, riding with her back toward the engine. Suddenly, the mother said to her, "Charlotte, come here and sit beside me. It will make you sick if you ride backward." A suggestion like this placed in the mind of a child is sufficient to influence her the rest of her life while riding in any class of vehicle. It will do a great deal to spoil her enjoyment of traveling, because she will fuss over securing a seat facing the direction in which she is traveling. And if she be forced through circumstances to ride backward, the autosuggestion arising from the old suggestion given by the mother will be sufficient to make her miserable, if not actually sick. There is no reason on earth why a person should not ride backward as comfortably as any other way. Still, I have seen women standing in a streetcar refuse to accept a seat offered to them, the excuse being, "Thank you, I prefer to stand. It makes me sick to ride backward." Poor things, they're made miserable by a common superstition or a suggestion given to them in childhood. I have selected this illustration because the superstition or belief is a very common one, but there are thousands of similar absurdities prevalent among the masses to make life fussy and unhappy. Let us arise then and see what we can do by new autosuggestions to stamp out these old absurd notions, first in ourselves, and then by precept and practice endeavor to assist our fellow men to free themselves from their self-imposed burdens. Let us examine ourselves to discover the part played by superstitions, absurd childish impressions, and habits formed in childhood in making us miserable or unhealthy or in retarding our progress in this world. Then let us make ourselves over again by constantly repeated autosuggestions in the form of affirmations that we are masters of our own destiny, that right thinking and right living bring health, that we are brave, strong, and fearless, that good luck, which is another name for success, is the result of perseverance backed up by optimistic thinking. For as we think, so shall we become. And I predict that we shall be repaid 1,000-fold by the strengthening of the mind and body that will follow, and the increased pleasure we shall have in living. And the children, teach them the importance of partaking of the life essentials and place suggestions in their minds that they will grow up strong, fearless, noble, and courageous. Study carefully the environment from which they receive their first and consequently their most powerful and lasting impressions. Let the next generation of men be so freed from the petty past that their faces will not blanch at the howl of a dog outside the door, and that they may, if they wish, be married or start a journey all unterrified on Friday or on the 13th day of the month. End of chapter 4. Now, let me just say something. If you think self-suggestion, autosuggestion doesn't work, think about how many subliminal autosuggestions are being bombarded to you and to me by corporate companies. And we don't even realize it. Why not now we start using these techniques? And even though this may be an antiquarian's book, the information is priceless. Come to the next video where I continue with chapter 5. Please do hit like, share, and subscribe.